Every Hardy remembers the night Jack Thornton died. One landslide, one off-screen death, and the happiest man in Hope Valley was gone less than a full episode after his own wedding. For years, the official explanation was 3 words long. Personal reasons. That was it. That was all Daniel Lissing gave us on camera, and it turned an entire fandom into amateur detectives overnight. Some fans blamed a falling out with the network. Some blamed jealousy behind the scenes. Some just assumed Hallmark pushed him out the door. But here is the part almost nobody actually talks about. According to the show's own executive producer, Daniel Lissing did not wake up one morning and quit. He had been asking to leave for 2 full seasons before Hope Valley finally let him go. That one detail changes this entire story, and by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why a Mountie's tragic death in a mining town that never actually existed led directly to a real proposal on a real birthday between Daniel Lissing and a woman he never would have met if the show had said yes to him sooner. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, welcome in, get comfortable, because this one has layers. We are going to go through this in order. What Daniel actually said the day after that finale aired, what his co-stars and the show's own executive producer have revealed since in podcasts and interviews spread out across 6 years. The one theory Hardys still argue about in the comments that has never actually been confirmed by anyone involved. And where Jack Thornton's actor is right now, because that part matters more than you might think, especially with what is airing in just 8 days. Let's get into it. Before we get into the exit, it is worth remembering why this hurt so much in the first place. Jack Thornton was not a side character. He was the reason half of Hope Valley's plots existed at all. A stiff, dutiful Mountie who slowly, painfully, over 4 full seasons, let a city school teacher named Elizabeth Thatcher crack him open. Hardys did not just watch that romance. They lived in it for years, through a broken engagement, a kidnapping storyline, war deployment fears, and finally, in season 5, a wedding that felt like it had been earned one slow scene at a time. Daniel Lissing was Jack for 5 seasons and 44 episodes. When an actor plays a role that carefully for that long, the character stops belonging only to the writers. He belongs to the audience too. Which is exactly why what happened next felt so personal. Season 5 gave us the wedding fans had waited years for, and it should have been pure celebration. Instead, executive producer Brian Bird has since admitted the episode was shot under a strange kind of tension because behind the scenes, the writers already knew Daniel was not coming back for season 6. Go rewatch Jack's goodbye scene, the one where he rides off on his final assignment and Elizabeth runs after the wagon calling his name. Bird has named that scene as one of his favorite moments in the entire series, and he has said the reason it lands so hard is that nobody on set actually knew, while filming it, whether Jack was riding back into frame again. That is not an accident of good acting. That is a production quietly saying goodbye to an actor in real time, using the story itself as the exit door. Then came the finale, an episode called Close to My Heart. Jack, off on a training mission at a location called Fort Clay, is killed in a landslide, off-screen, leaving Elizabeth a widow carrying their unborn child. For a network built on comfort on small towns where nothing truly terrible ever happens, this was a gut punch nobody saw coming. Hallmark does not kill off its leading men. Hallmark especially does not kill off its leading men 1 season after their wedding. So the fandom did not just grieve, it demanded answers. And to Hallmark's credit, they did not hide from the moment. The day after that finale aired, Daniel Lissing sat down with Aaron Krakow, Lori Loughlin, and executive producer Brian Bird for a Facebook Live to address it head-on. Here is what Daniel actually said, because the exact wording matters. He told fans that circumstances had come up that made it necessary for him to leave, and that his reasons were very personal to him. He was careful, almost visibly careful, to shut down any talk of a feud. Hallmark, he said, had been nothing but supportive. His co-stars had been nothing but supportive. No bad blood. No on-set drama. No falling out with the network. Just a vague 3-word explanation that gave Hardys absolutely nothing to work with. If you go back and actually watch that broadcast now, you can feel how uncomfortable that moment is. 3 people who clearly love each other, sitting in front of a camera, trying to protect a friend's privacy while an entire fan base is begging them for a real answer. Daniel never gave one that day. He has not really given one since, which is exactly why the theories started and why they never really stopped. The most persistent theory traces back to something Lori Loughlin said on that very same broadcast. She reminded fans gently that actors work under contracts and that contracts expire. Daniel had a choice, she explained, to renegotiate or to move on, and he chose to move on. That single comment is where the contract theory was born, and it has followed this story for 6 years. Some fans have pointed out that around this same period, both Loughlin and Krakow were elevated to executive producer credits on the show, while Lissing was not, and have speculated that a pay gap or a lack of creative input into the show's direction may have played into his decision not to re-sign. I want to be straight with you here, because getting this right matters more to me than making it sound juicier than it is. That specific theory about pay and producer credits has never been confirmed by Daniel, by Hallmark, or by Brian Bird. It is a pattern some fans noticed, not a fact anyone involved has ever admitted to. So hold on to it as a possibility, not a conclusion, because what actually did get confirmed later on is honestly more interesting than the rumor ever was. In September of 2020, more than 2 years after Jack's death aired, Brian Bird sat down for a long 2-part conversation on the Hardy's Hotline podcast. And he said something that barely made headlines at the time, but completely reframes this entire story. Bird revealed that Daniel Lissing had actually been asking to leave the show for 2 seasons before it finally happened. Not 2 months. 2 seasons. He also confirmed that for his final 2 years on the show, Daniel was only working part-time, which is exactly why the writers had to, in Bird's own words, get him married and buried in the space of about 5 episodes. Sit with that for a second. This was not a sudden blindsiding departure. This was a slow, quiet negotiation playing out for years that finally reached its conclusion, right as Jack and Elizabeth's wedding gave the writers a clean, emotionally satisfying place to let him go. Aaron Krakow has since filled in her own piece of this. Speaking on the Deck, the Hallmark podcast, she admitted that when the news first landed, her mind went straight to the practical fear underneath it. She has said she genuinely wondered what it would mean for everyone else on the call sheet, whether the show would even keep going, and whether Hallmark would let them continue without Daniel at all. Krakow has also said that when he actually told her, he did not frame it as weighing his options. He told her plainly that he had already gone to the network and that he was leaving, and he told her in person because he did not want her hearing it from anyone else first. She has said she was genuinely deeply sad and has called Daniel one of the best scene partners she has ever had, a real partner in crime across those 5 seasons. Honestly, that detail hits different than the polished Facebook Live statement did. That is not a business decision announced to a room. That is one friend making sure another friend heard hard news from him directly before the rest of the world did. Once Hallmark knew Daniel was truly leaving, the writers reportedly worked through every option on the table. Lachlan has said recasting Jack was discussed and rejected almost immediately because the chemistry between Lissing and Krakow was considered impossible to replicate with anyone else in the role. They also floated a divorce-style exit, sending Jack off to Canada's Northern Territories and having him ask Elizabeth to move on without him. That idea died fast too, because a Mountie abandoning his pregnant wife did not fit anything about who Jack Thornton actually was as a character. Once those two doors closed, there was really only one option left that felt true to him, and it is the one we got. Bird has even said the writers looked at how British dramas like Downton Abbey handled the sudden loss of a major character for inspiration, choosing one clean, decisive ending over a long, drawn-out illness storyline, largely because Daniel's limited part-time schedule did not give them enough episodes to do it any other way. Now here is the part of this story that turns it from sad into something genuinely beautiful, and it is the part Daniel Lissing has actually talked about more openly than anything else about his exit. Shortly after leaving the show, in that same year, 2018, Daniel took a trip to Reykjavik, Iceland. At a bar during that trip, he struck up a conversation with a woman named Nadia, who had just finished her master's degree in business and was traveling to celebrate. She had no idea who he was. By her own account, her first thought was basically that this cheerful, slightly wild Australian stranger seemed fun, but maybe a little unhinged. She did not find out he was a working actor until they had already met up 3 or 4 separate times. That coincidence became a relationship. The relationship became an engagement in October of 2019 when Daniel proposed to her at their home on her birthday, speaking, in his words, straight from the heart. They planned a big beach wedding in Bali for 2020 and then, like nearly every couple on the planet that year, watched the pandemic take that plan apart piece by piece. They married anyway, in a small, private ceremony, and around that same window of time, both became American citizens. In an interview with Entertainment Tonight in early 2020, Daniel finally said the thing that reframes his entire departure. He said that if he had stayed on the show through season 6, filming in Canada, he never would have crossed paths with Nadia at all. He said he had no regrets about walking away, because meeting her mattered more to him than any job ever could. I think that is honestly the real answer underneath this whole story. Even more than the contract, even more than the part-time schedule. He was already looking for a door out, and the moment he walked through it, life handed him something he has said more than once was worth infinitely more than staying in Hope Valley. Here is something a lot of casual viewers do not realize. Jack Thornton actually did come back once in 2021 in the spin-off series When Hope Calls in an episode titled A Country Christmas Part 2. It was brief, but for longtime Hardys it counted. Since leaving Hope Valley, Daniel has stayed genuinely busy and honestly more versatile than people give him credit for. He played the outlaw, Jesse James, in an episode of Timeless. He turned up in Blind Spot. He had a recurring arc on the CBS series SWAT, played a fictional TV cop named Sterling Freeman across multiple seasons of ABC's The Rookie, which, if you think about it, is a very funny piece of casting. An actor playing an actor who plays a cop. right after playing an actual Mountie for 5 years. He also worked steadily across Great American Family Christmas movies through the early 2020s. Then, in November of 2024, Hallmark finally gave Hardys the reunion they had been begging for since 2018. Daniel and Aaron Krakow shared a screen again for the first time in a holiday movie called Santa Tell Me, and by every account, including Krakow's own, that chemistry had not gone anywhere. In 2026, his Hallmark schedule has only picked up from there. He returned this past July in Christmas Under Construction opposite Jessica Lowndes. He is currently filming yet another Hallmark Christmas movie up in Vancouver, the very city where Hope Valley itself was filmed for all those years. And here is your release date payoff for actually sitting through this whole story. On Saturday, August 15th, just 8 days from when I am putting this video out, Daniel returns to Hallmark in a movie called Aussie At Heart, filmed on location in Queensland, Australia, his actual home country. He stars opposite Rihannon Fish as two former co-workers turned rivals who get thrown back together to plan a couple's anniversary and slowly fall for each other while confronting their own history. If you have ever wondered what Jack Thornton would look like, relaxed, sunburnt, and finally home, mark your calendar, because this is about as close as Hallmark has ever let him get. Here is my honest read on all of this, after going through 6 years of scattered interviews to put it together in one place. I do not think Daniel Lissing was pushed out, and I do not think he was chased off by some hidden feud either. I think a young actor spent 2 years quietly asking to leave a role that had made him a household name, was finally let go right as the story itself handed the writers a graceful exit, and then found the actual love of his life almost immediately after, on a trip he only got to take because he was finally free. Hope Valley lost Jack Thornton, but watching where Daniel Lissing's life actually went afterward, married, thriving, still welcomed back by Hallmark practically every year since, it is genuinely hard to call this anything other than a happy ending that just happened to start with a funeral. So that is the real story, as close to the full picture as 6 years of scattered interviews will ever let us get. Are you Team Jack forever, still not fully over that landslide? Or do you think Hope Valley handled his exit about as well as it possibly could have? Tell me down in the comments. I read every single one of them. If this kind of deep dive is what brings you to this channel, hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one. And if you are marking your calendar for August 15th, come back and drop a comment once you have watched Aussie at Heart and let me know if Nate feels like Jack Thornton to you at all. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.